away from that interview because we do have a developing story here on ENCA on Newsday. I'm going to take you live to Saxonwold in northern Johannesburg, outside the Gupta compound, where my reporter colleague Samkeli Maseko is standing by. And Samkeli, good afternoon to you. And this is ahead of what? What are we expecting this afternoon?
Well, Jeremy, I'm just going to step out of shot and ask my colleague to show you as SARS and the Asset Forfeiture Unit are gaining access into the Gupta compound here in Saxonworld. Earlier on, they were refused entry by their lawyer. The state had, SARS and the Asset Forfeiture Unit had to ask for national intervention in order to access the premises. We understand that the assets of the Guptas may be being seized right now by South African Revenue Services for the allegations of state capture and corruption that have been entangled and entangling the Gupta family over issues such as the Estina dairy farm and other state-owned enterprises. You'd remember that state of capture inquiry into state-owned enterprises in Parliament, but now as it stands, the Asset Forfeiture Unit and the South African Revenue Services have gained access into the Gupta compound in what looks like SARS trying to seize a number of assets from the Gupta family and also trying to attain certain documentation that may lead to further investigations and probes that are ongoing on to the Gupta brothers.
Samkeli, when you say that there was need for national intervention, what are you saying to me?
I'm basically saying here, Jeremy, that the Gupta's lawyer who is here was refusing for the Asset Forfeiture Unit, the AFU, and for SARS to gain access to the premises of the Gupta family. So the various investigators and asset forfeiture agents that were here had to call for national intervention in order to get the permission to access this premises that the owners, through their lawyer, are seemingly denying the state-owned investigative agencies such as the Asset Forfeiture Unit and the South African Revenue Services from accessing the premises owned by the Gupta family.
I'm seeing about 5, 6 or 7 people outside the home at the moment. Are you able to give us a clear indication of just how many officials are now in the process of gaining entry? As a
you see now, Jeremy, there's just a truck that has just come and stood in front of us. They are probably looking themselves curious of what is currently going on, but I can confirm to you that at least about 11 or 12 law enforcement agencies have personnel have gone inside the Gupta compound. You see a number of people such as 2 police officers dressed in SAPS uniform. They're currently standing outside, and one lady who is currently on her phone, and other personnel, 3 men, 1 sitting down and 2 others on their feet. So there are a number of people who have gone in, but there is something rather interesting as well. I'm not sure that we can show the visuals of this lady with her kids. She's seemingly of Indian descendant and speaks their language. I spoke to her earlier on. My colleague is just showing them. I would just request that we blur the visuals of the kids. She did not want to tell me what is going on here and has been on the phone constantly since I last spoke to her about 10 or 15 minutes ago. So it's rather interesting of what's going on, because she has not gone into any house since the raid happened. Interestingly now, Jeremy, as you would look, she is gaining access to the premises with her kids who are coming from school. She's constantly been on her phone. Only she knows who she is constantly communicating with.
We don't have an identity, though.
We don't have an identity as yet, Jeremy, because I tried to speak to her and she did not want to say anything to me on who she is and what is her business here. But judging from the language she spoke of, one of the Indian languages from the country India, one could assume that she is possibly one of the wives or one of the relatives of the Gupta brothers with her kids who are still currently in the country, but we are yet to confirm her identity and who she is. But we obviously we did not speak to the kids due out of respect. We spoke to her directly, and she told the kids not to speak to me.
Have you had any opportunity to discern who is in the house itself? We know that at least one of the members of the Gupta family, Ajay Gupta, was last seen in Dubai when he was confronted by a South African citizen with a cell phone camera. That person was later detained. Anybody in the house at this point?
As it stands, Jeremy, we can't confirm or say who is currently in the house. We've not gotten any sort of information of that nature as yet. We'll wait for SARS to come out along with the Asset Forfeiture Unit. We'll also hound Hungwani Mlaudzi, the national spokesperson of the Hawks, to give us further detail and clarity on what's currently going on and who was in this premises here owned by the Gupta brothers, who have seemingly fled South Africa, with AJ being spotted in Dubai by that South African businessman who is now reported to have been having been arrested in Dubai.
Do we, or have you had an opportunity to speak to either a representative from the Asset Forfeiture Unit or anybody from SARS?
As it stands, Jeremy, they do not want to speak to us. They were actually saying that we must be on the other side of the street where we are currently standing now doing this live broadcast. But knowing us journalists and myself, I went in there snooping to try and find out what was going on, which is where I got the information that the Guptas are seemingly denying the Asset Forfeiture Unit and SARS access to the premises. One of the law enforcement agencies was saying that they now are forced to call for national intervention in order to access the premises. But as it stands, we've not had any official word from these law enforcement authorities and agencies.
I'm counting behind you 2 law enforcement officers, and I think I saw maybe 2 or 3 in the street adjacent to where you're standing. I seem to remember last time there was a huge number or there was a huge show of force when the SAPS arrived. The sense I'm getting, and you'll correct me if I'm wrong, is this might be slightly more muted or not. I don't know.
Well, I would say, Jeremy, it's not slightly more muted. In fact, I would think they've got a relatively strong showing here. It's just that they are not driving branded cars of colors of the Hawks or of the South African Police Service. They are seemingly driving cars that do not have any branding of SAPS or the Hawks, or there's only one car which I'll ask my colleague to show you. You won't see it properly because the branding of the South African Revenue Services SARS is on the side. It's I don't want to give that company free branding, but it's that van, that white van there. So I don't want to give them free advertising, but it's that white van that's over there that belongs to SARS as it stands. So other police officers and other law enforcement agencies are not driving branded cars of their various institutions that they work for.
All right, so just to recap then, very quickly, within the last 10 minutes or so, we'll just stay on these live pictures. Representatives from the Asset Forfeiture Unit, as well as the South African Revenue Service and the SAPS have arrived at the Gupta's very large and palatial compound. It's not too far from the Johannesburg Zoo. A number of vehicles, as you can see, parked outside, and they have now gained access to the property, we understand, all ahead of some form of raid. We have not got any official word as to why this is happening or what in fact they are after. There was some consternation a little earlier, but it was resolved after the family lawyer, we're being told, did eventually allow access into the vehicle or into the house. One assumes that the necessary warrants were obtained in that respect, and now we wait to see what the AFU and SARS as well as the Hawks have to say in that respect. So Samkeli Maseko, for the moment I'm going to leave it there, but we will return the moment anything happens as the story continues to develop here on Newsday on ENCA.